Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Keith and I'm sure glad you stopped by today. In today's video, I'm going to bring you along with me as we replace the fuel pump in our 2003 Ford Expedition. Now, we've already gone through the process of troubleshooting and diagnosing this vehicle. If you'd like to check out those videos, I'll put a card up above and we'll leave some links down in the description below to a playlist. Now, prior to tackling this repair, I looked around for some YouTube videos and couldn't find any that provided details on how to completely drop and reinstall the tank on these second generation Ford Expeditions. So I plan to cover all of that with you in today's video. And spoiler alert, I ran into some issues trying to reinstall the tank, so we had to do some creative out-of-the-box thinking to get the job done. If all that sounds good to you, let's dive in. Next, we need to make sure we release the fuel system pressure. We don't want to start disconnecting fuel lines and hoses with the system still under pressure. In order to relieve pressure, I'm going to connect my fuel pressure gauge to the Schrader valve. If you want more information on this technique and procedure, I'll provide you with some links to other videos that will give you more details down in the description below. Next, you're going to want to check your fuel gauge to see how much fuel you have in your tank and consider draining the fuel. In my case, I had about 1/4 of a tank, and looking back, if I had any more fuel than this in the tank, this would have made this tank very difficult to handle and maneuver when trying to lower it to the ground. So you need to consider draining the tank at this point. So first step I want to essentially put this car to sleep. Since we're going to be dealing with electrical, we're going to be dealing with gas, we're going to be lifting this vehicle in the air, let's go ahead and remove the negative battery cable from the battery. Now, you want to look to do this as well if you have a Eddie Bauer Expedition that's in this year range, or you have a Navigator. Those vehicles equipped with the air suspension. Before you lift the vehicle in the air, you want to make sure you disconnect the cable or you turn the air suspension off so that vehicle doesn't move on you or shift while you have it in the air. In order to get this tank down, we need to lift this vehicle in the air. First, I'm going to place wheel chocks on the front and back of both of my front tires. Then I'm going to get a piece of 2x4 and place it in between my hydraulic jack and rear differential. Then I'm going to jack up on the differential until we get the vehicle up to a comfortable working height. Then I'm going to place 2 of my jack stands at the rear designated lift points on this vehicle as shown here in the picture. So we're working on our 2003 Ford Expedition where we have to replace the fuel pump. One of the most difficult things about fuel pump jobs is just accessing the fuel tank and dropping it. So we're going to show you what we got to do in order to drop this tank on this Ford Expedition, go through all the connections with you, and then bring you along as we drop the tank. So let's go into the car and let's show you all the things you're going to have to disconnect before dropping this tank. And we're working from the ground, so we're not on the lift. So hopefully this gives you a perspective of, if you're working on the ground, how to access all these components. Let's go under the vehicle. So we're at the front of the vehicle now. So at the front of the vehicle, and there are 2 fuel lines you want to disconnect. This one right here, the green, with the green clips, all you do is squeeze these in, and while you're squeezing these in, pull this out. This one's a bit different. The way you do this is that it's going to be a clip that's connected to this side, and what you have to do is unclip it, and after you unclip it, you just push it up, and then once you push it up, you can pull this out. So again, you just unclip the 2 red pieces, and once you unclip it, they'll come apart, and you have to push this up, and then once you push it up, it'll look something like this, and then you can pull this out. So these are the connections at the front of the tank. Now let's go to the back of the tank. So in the back of the tank, this is where things get a little bit tricky, and it's because it's tricky just because it's just hard to access. It's not a clean access point like the front of the tank, but it's still definitely doable. So you got 2 fuel lines, and they're the green clips right here. So you're just going to push those in, and while you push them in, slide them off, and one is larger than the other. So those are the 2 right there. Then up here you got the filler neck. It took us the most time to work on this filler neck. I don't know if you can see it, it's off now, but I'm pointing to it right here. And the filler neck took so much time because the clamp was positioned to where the screw was pointing up, and we're not going to put it in that way. So that screw was pointing up, so I had to get in there and fiddle around and try to get that. But that was a quarter inch. I used my wrench to get it off, and then after we got it loose, we swung it down and used a 1/4 inch socket. So those are the connections on the front and the back, and there is a vent tube on the top of the tank that we've got to get to as well, but we can't get to that right now because it's just too tight. So we're going to drop this tank down slowly, and as we drop it down, we'll then be able to put our hand in there to disconnect that vent tube. So hold on, let's get our jack position. We'll be right back. Next, we're going to loosen up the rear sway bar bracket and swing the sway bar out of the way. You don't have to completely remove the entire sway bar. Just loosen up the bracket like we're doing here and swing it out of the way so that the tank can come down. Now we'll take our sway bar and just swing it out the way here. Here we go. So right now I'm trying to loosen up this back strap. We've already got the front one, so I'm gonna loosen up this back strap right now. You see we got some wood, got our jack, got some jack stands in the back. Just want to support this tank so it doesn't come crashing down on us. So that's why we got our wood and our jack and jack stand. So I'm gonna go in here now and use this is a 13 millimeter. And it only has bolts on one side. The other side is like a little something or other that just swivels into a slot up there. So once we do this back one, this thing should be free to come down. And we gotta get that valve to the top of there. Alright, now I want to get to my get to this right here. Get a little shorter. Get a shorter extension. Alright, now we're going to slowly drop this tank down. And we got to get to that valve at the top too, so we'll come down slow to get this puppy down. Just checking the straps. So using a marker, I marked the two straps, which one was the front and which one was the rear, just as an additional measure to help us when it comes to reinstalling a bit later. So with our two straps removed, this tank, now we've lowered it using our hydraulic jack and our plywood here, and as you can see, as we brought it down slowly, I was able to remove the electrical connector. So that tank is now disconnected from that electrical connector. We've still got the back of the tank elevated because that vent hose is still connected at the very top. So we've got it angled like this so I can then reach in there with my hand and with my wrench or my ratchet and be able to disconnect that vent hose. So if you see it up there, there's a screw down clamp that's connecting that vent hose to the tank. So now we've got to reach in there and get that disconnected, and once we get that disconnected, this tank should be free and clear to come on down. Pull this tank down. There we go. So we're completely down now. If this information has helped you out, do us a huge favor and smash that like button right now and consider subscribing. We'd really appreciate it. Get this baby over here. So now we've got our tank on the ground, completely disconnected. We've got it lowered, and I'm going to use just an old work blanket and put it up under the tank as I slide it out. That tank is made of plastic, and I didn't want it just rubbing all on the driveway on the concrete. So I've got a work blanket that I'm using just to help act as a barrier between it and the concrete. So we're getting ready now to pour the fuel out of the fuel tank into this bucket. I think that's going to help us when we get to go to reinstall it. So inside of here, there's a check valve that only allows, prevents fuel from coming back up, only allows it to go in. So we need to press this down with the screwdriver. And after doing that, we're going to pour our fuel into that. I really appreciate my son helping me out here. This tank was rather heavy, even it being only a quarter of a tank full. So we had to do this multiple times in order to empty this entire tank. And as you can see here, we have a screwdriver inserted at the end of this tank, pressing down on that check valve so that gasoline can flow out of the opposite direction. Next, I want to take my mini shop vac and just configure it to blower mode, and let's just blow any trash, any debris off this tank. So when we open it up, we just reduce the chances of any of that trash getting inside of the tank. Now we're ready to remove the fuel lines connected to the fuel pump. Now these are the lines that have the red tabs on them that can be kind of tricky. But the technique you want to remember is to unclip them and then push both tabs out. Unclip and push both tabs out. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully that'll help you when it comes to removing these fuel lines. Now let's remove the retaining nut that's holding the fuel pump assembly in place. They do sell a tool you can purchase to remove this nut, but I've had really good success over the years just using the technique I'm showing you here. Just get a small length of 2x4 and position it on the ears of that nut and just knock on it alternating sides to get that nut spinning in the right direction. And once it gets loose enough, you can just turn it off the rest of the way by hand. Now we're ready to remove the old fuel pump assembly. You might need to kind of maneuver it a little bit and turn and twist just to get it to come out of the opening. And don't forget to remove that old fuel pump O-ring as well. Your new fuel pump should come with a brand new O-ring. So I think what we're going to do now, before we put in the new fuel pump, let's go ahead and replace this fuel filter. So now I'm going to show you how to remove this outer cover. We're going to take a flathead screwdriver, get in here and turn it about 45 degrees and free up this cover down here. So that's out. Remove the fuel filter. What we did is just took us a flathead screwdriver. To remove this cover, you're going to take a flathead screwdriver, turn it to release those tabs, and then it comes out. And here we have the fuel filter. So for this, we're just going to press these buttons in. They're going to be, if you come to this back side, they're going to be two buttons. Two buttons here. We're just going to press it in to pull it off. Let's get these labeled well so we know what's what here. So I'm just labeling this right here because it's like it's gonna just want to shoot off. So this is gonna be the right side. So this is gonna be right. This is gonna be left. I like to label stuff just as I look at it. So this is gonna be the right. This is gonna be on the left side. So this is also gonna be top. This is going to be bottom, and this one is going to be the guy that's over here. Okay, so now let's release this. That's off. Now let's come in over here to this side. And that's off. So this is our fuel filter. Now we're ready to install our new fuel filter here. So let's go ahead and get it installed. When I'm doing repairs like this that are like multiple steps, I like to take pictures as I go. And right here you see me looking back at my cell phone just to make sure I got the orientation of this fuel filter correct. So that's just a quick tip for you. Don't be intimidated at all by repairs like this, and if you need to, just take pictures as you go, and you can use those as notes for later. So we're going to make sure we have it oriented the right way. Remember, the short stem was at the top, the long one was at the bottom, so let's go ahead and do that now. Shorty, yep, make sure we hear that click. There we go, got the click, that looks good. Let's get this now. Got that click, very good. Let's go ahead and secure it. Good on both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and put our cover back on. So with our cover, remember how these went into the slots here. So what I'm going to do is clip on the top side first. Then once I do that, let's take our screwdriver and go into this slot down here. Press that one in. There we go. So that's good. Alright. So now we're ready to put our new fuel pump in. Take our cover off that we use. Your new fuel pump should come with an O-ring. So we're going to take the old O-ring off. We're going to use this new one. Slap it on here. Before we put it on here, I'm going to take some oil and dab my fingers with it. I don't like to put it's like just some motor oil, 5W20. I'm just gonna take my fingers and just go over this O-ring. I don't want it to go in dry. Good seal on here. So we're gonna put our O-ring in. So, then we're going to get our fuel pump, and remember the orientation. We need to be pointing outward. So let's go ahead and get our float in. Everything in here. Make sure you're oriented the right way. And you remember, it's going to be a little tension to this too. It's got that spring, it's kind of spring loaded a little bit. So keep that in mind. Then we're going to get our ring here to put on. I'm going to brush our threads too a little bit, make sure our threads aren't dirty. Let's go in here. I'm going to lube up this ring with a little bit of oil just to help us get a nice spin on here. Let's put a bit of oil on these threads. There we go. Come in here like that. Make sure we're getting these slots. You might have to push down on it a little bit just to make sure you're in the slots. Once you're in, let's see, just make sure the O-ring looks good. Just making sure our O-ring didn't leak out on us. So I'm pushing down on it too while I do this. So now let's go ahead and give this thing a few taps to try to send it around a little bit more and tighten it up. Yep, I think that's good. There we go, less is more. So now we're ready to put our connectors back on. Remember, one of these is going to be larger than the other one. This is the larger one, this is a smaller one. So you're not going to be able to mix these up. So let's go on here. And then we're going to just push it through. And then we need to lock it. So let's got it pushed through. So once you push it through, you want to make sure you got your tabs interlocked right there. So that looks good. Now let's move on to this one. Spread our tabs out like so. Push them all the way in. Remove this over the neck. Push it all the way through to where it locks. We're going to come in, lock our tab. Perfect. There we go. Both of these are locked in place. Yeah, just double check our work. Looks good. So at this point, we already got our new fuel pump installed, we have our new fuel filter installed, and we're ready to reinstall our tank. And this is where things got a little bit challenging. I ran into some issues trying to connect that top vent hose to the tank. So here I'm gonna show you what we ended up coming up with and explain in a bit more detail why this was so challenging for me. So after fighting this tank, trying to get this vent, trying to get this connector here, so after fighting with this tank for a number of hours, longer than I probably even want to admit to, I am going with another option. I cannot get this to go into that hose. It is just way too tight in there. The problem is that once you get that tank up like this, it has to be up high at an angle in order to be able to connect to the hose. But once you get it up at this angle like this, it's very difficult to get your fingers in there to tighten up the hose. And better yet, to make the connection. Because take a look at this hose. This is a 1/2 inch diameter that goes over this right here. This just doesn't go on here. You have to push this on with some force. Now imagine trying to do this with your hand all up there and you're tight and you got weird angles. It's just not happening for me. So this is what I've come up with. I have a 1/2 inch inside diameter fuel line. I've got a hose mender made out of metal here. I have a hose clamp on this side. The plan is we're going to go under the vehicle and we're going to attach this mender to the hose that's up there. And then once we do that, we're going to leave this hose, try to have it coiled. So when it goes to make that connection, we're sitting somewhere like this. And then I want this coil to kind of sit in this valley right here and just be kicked off to the side so it doesn't get in the way. So my end product hopefully is something that looks like that. To where I made it up with that hose. I made it up with this thing. I'll slide this on here as far as I can get it. I see where the discoloration is, so I'll try to slide it on there that far, and then I'll connect this piece here. Will get connected to the hose underneath, and then once we get all this done, we'll do a test fit, push it up there, because what I want to make sure is that this hose doesn't get in the way, and that I can still make these connections at the back of the tank I need to make and at the front of the tank. And this hose doesn't prevent the tank from moving back and forth, but I think if I can sit it down in this valley, like right here, it shouldn't get in the way. So that's my thought. That's the plan going in. Let's get set up and we'll be right back. So here's a view of our workaround that we've implemented. So here you see the connection of the hose to the actual tank itself. And here you see where we have connected the hose using the hose mender to the actual vent hose that's on the vehicle. And here's a view of the hose in its entirety. And you see that one side of the hose is connected to the tank and the other side is connected to the vent hose that's on the vehicle. So the convenient thing about this is that this tank is on the ground and we've already connected this hose since we've added this additional segment of hose, and now we can just raise the tank with this connection already being made. So yeah, this is the workaround we implemented. And one thing I've learned over the years in working on vehicles is just patience. You know, when we hit this, when we encountered this challenge, you know, that's not a time to start cussing and fussing, throwing tools. That doesn't really help you. You know, honestly, when I encountered this, I stopped for the day. It took me a couple of days to do this. I stopped for the day, just put everything up, you know, took a shower, ate, hung out with my family, slept on it. And I came back the next day fresh, ready to go, and had the idea to implement this solution, and thankfully it worked. So that's just a lesson working on cars. Stay patient, guys. Keep yourself calm, composed, and you'll definitely figure it out and overcome whatever obstacle that may come your way. So we did a quick test fit just to make sure our theory held up and that our workaround was going to work. That is, that hose is going to ride at the very top of the tank and not get in the way of us making any connection. And that proved to be true. So then at that point, as we were raising the tank, I was able to make the electrical connection there. And as we got the tank to the very top, while being supported by our jack stand and also some ratcheting straps, we were able to put the tank straps back on the tank and get them positioned. One thing you may have noticed that I want to mention is that we removed the spare tire and we also removed the driver's side rear tire. Doing so helped us with additional visibility and access. So definitely consider taking those 2 additional steps if needed. With our tank secure and in place, let's go ahead and get this sway bar bracket positioned and put back in place as well. Now let's go ahead and make our connections to the tank. I'm going to start off at the front of the tank and reconnect our fuel lines. After that, let's move back to the rear of the tank and reconnect our fuel lines. And lastly, let's make sure we reconnect this filler hose and attach it to the tank with the hose clamp. Now let's go ahead and reinstall our rear driver's side tire. Recall, this is the tire I removed just to give me a bit more visibility and access. So let's go ahead and reinstall this tire. So at this point, we've got the vehicle safely on the ground. We've removed the jack and the jack stands, and we're just filling it back up with gas. Remember, we took that gas out of the tank early on, and now we're going to go ahead and put that gas right back into the tank. So we just put the some fuel in the fuel tank. Now I'm going to just prime it a little bit. So I'm going to turn the key to the on position. I'm not going to try to start it. I'm just going to prime it a few times to get some fuel up to the fuel rail. Then also, I'm going to try to see if I hear the actual prime as well. So keys in ignition. I can hear that pump kicking in. Let's try to start it. So we're back in the vehicle now. We've added some more gas. We're not up to a quarter tank yet, but as y'all saw in the last clip, it did start. And I can hear the prime now too. Remember, I couldn't hear that prime before? You can hear it. like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope this video helped you out. If it did, hit that subscribe button and click that bell so anytime we drop a new video, you'll be the first to know. Hit that like button and leave me some comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in any of the products we used in today's video, we'll leave some links down below. Hope you have an awesome day, and thanks for watching.